At 12 years old, Lara lost her school fees. But because of that loss, a shoemaker would lose his home. 15 years later, the girl would become a millionaire. And the shoemaker would be forgotten. This is the story of one small act of kindness that destroyed a life, and then came back to save it. But it all started on a morning in Riverbank, when a poor girl was trusted with Nigerian naira 4,000 and lost it. Mrs. Fowler said, "Hold this envelope tight, my daughter. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anybody. Just go straight to school and pay the bursar." "Yes, Mama. I'll guard it with my life." Mrs. Fowler kissed her daughter's forehead, not knowing this would be the beginning of a story that would span 15 years and change multiple lives forever. Lara walked to school with the envelope pressed against her chest. But as children often do, she got distracted. Her friend Amoka called her over to see something. A small crowd gathered around the street magician. Just for a moment, Lara stopped to watch. Just for a moment, she loosened her grip on the envelope. When she remembered and checked her pocket 5 minutes later, the envelope was gone. The panic that seized Lara was like ice water in her veins. She searched frantically, in her bag, on the ground, asking everyone nearby. But the money had vanished like smoke. 4,000 naira. Her entire term school fees. Gone. She ran back along the path she had taken, tears streaming down her face. People stared, some with pity, others with the hardened indifference that poverty breeds. By the time she reached the main road, Lara was sobbing openly, knowing that her education, her only ladder out of poverty, had just been snatched away. It was then that she heard a gentle voice. "My child, why do you cry like the world has ended?" Lara looked up to see an old man sitting behind a wooden table covered with worn shoes and leather scraps. His face was creased with age and hardship, but his eyes were kind. Beside him sat a small boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, carefully watching his grandfather walk on a torn sandal. This was Pa Eze, though Lara didn't know his name then. He had been mending shoes on this corner of Riverbank for 20 years. The boy was Chidi, his grandson, whom he had raised since the child's parents died in a motor accident 5 years ago. "Come, sit down here. Tell me what troubles you." Between sobs, Lara explained everything: the school fees, how hard her mother had worked to gather the money, how she had lost it, and how she would now be sent away from school. Pa Eze listened quietly, his weathered hands continuing to work on the shoe he was mending. When Lara finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Chidi. "Chidi, bring me the tin box from under the bench." The boy obeyed, pulling out a small, dented tin box. Pa Eze opened it slowly, revealing a small roll of naira notes tied with a rubber band. 4,000 naira exactly. It was his rent money, saved over 3 months of mending shoes in the scorching sun and torrential rain. "But Papa," the landlady said, "if we don't pay by tomorrow." "Sure, my boy." Pa Eze took the entire bundle and pressed it into Lara's trembling hands. "Education is not something you should lose because of one moment of misfortune. Take this. Pay your fees. Study hard. Make your mother proud." "But sir, I can't, this is too much." "You can, and you will. Someday, when you are successful, help another child who needs it. That is all the payment I need." Lara was overwhelmed. She knelt down, African style, to thank him, tears now of gratitude rather than despair. "I'll come back with my mother to thank you properly. I promise." "What is your name, sir?" "Names are not important, child. Go now, before the bursar's office closes." Lara ran off, clutching the money, turning back twice to wave at the old shoemaker and his grandson. As she disappeared into the crowd, Chidi looked up at his grandfather with worried eyes. "Papa, what will we tell Madam Sod about the rent?" Pa Eze put his hand on the boy's head gently. "We do not close our fist when God places someone in need before us. He who gives to the poor lends to the Almighty. Our rent will come from somewhere, you'll see. But God's plans often unfold in ways we don't expect. The next morning, Pa Eze arrived at his corner to find chaos. Municipal trucks were parked along the road, and uniformed officials were marking stalls with red X's. By order of the state government, all illegal structures along this road must be demolished immediately. You have 10 minutes to remove your belongings. Pa Eze's heart sank. He had been on this corner for 20 years, had even paid the local government levies, but he had no formal papers to prove his right to be there. Please sir, this is all I have. I'm an old man. I have a grandson to feed. Please. But pleading with bureaucracy is like arguing with the wind. Within an hour, Pa Eze's store was reduced to broken wood and scattered nails. His tools, hammers, oars, needles, some were salvaged, others crushed under the boots of demolition men. 20 years of building a small reputation, gone in minutes. Chidi helped his grandfather gather what they could carry. They walked slowly back to their rented room in Mama Soda's compound, Pa Eze trying to hide his despair from the boy. But worse was waiting. Aha! You're finally here. Where is my rent? Madame Sod stood at their door like an avenging angel, her face set in stone. She was not a wicked woman, but she had her own bills to pay, and Pa Eze was already 2 weeks late. Madam, please, something happened yesterday. I had the money, but... But what? But stories. Can I take your stories to my own landlord? Can I buy food with your excuses? Pa Eze explained about helping the schoolgirl, about his store being demolished, about needing just a few more days to figure something out. But Madame Sod had heard too many stories from too many tenants. I gave you 2 extra weeks already. Enough is enough. She had already packed their few belongings in Ghanamo's go bags. She dragged them outside and locked the door with a heavy padlock. When you have my money, come and see me. Until then, find somewhere else. That night, grandfather and grandson slept under the bridge at Carpenter bus stop. Pa Eze used his body to shield Chidi from the cold wind, but he couldn't shield him from the mosquitoes or the shame of homelessness. As Chidi finally fell asleep, Pa Eze stared at the stars, wondering if his act of kindness had been foolishness. But the morning brought new determination. Pa Eze remembered his old friend, Mr. Boko, who lived in New Dawn, a city about 2 hours away. Years ago, when Mr. Boko's workshop burned down, Pa Eze had given him his savings to restart. If you ever need anything, Mr. Boko had said, come and find me. It was time to collect on that old promise. While Pa Eze and Chidi began their journey to New Dawn, back in Riverbank, Lara had successfully paid her school fees. She rushed home to tell her mother the miraculous story of the kind shoemaker, but found chaos instead. Her stepfather, Colonel, was in one of his rages. He was a man who had promised love when he married Mrs. Fuller but delivered only bitterness and blame. I'm tired of carrying another man's child. Tired of this poverty. Tired of everything. He threw their possessions out of the house, clothes, pots, Lara's school books. Mrs. Fuller pleaded, but Connor was beyond reason. Go and meet the man who gave you this burden of a child. Let him feed you both. And so, mother and daughter found themselves on the roadside, their belongings scattered around them like the pieces of their broken life. Mrs. Fuller held Lara close, both of them crying, not knowing that their story was about to take the strangest turn. A man approached them, or what remained of a man. His clothes were tattered, his hair wild, his eyes unfocused. People called him prophet, though most thought he was simply mad. He wandered the streets of Riverbank, talking to himself, occasionally saying things that made no sense. But on this day, he stopped directly in front of Mrs. Fuller. His eyes suddenly cleared, as if seeing something beyond the physical world. Woman, why do you cry? Your tears will water the ground for a great harvest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, a raffle ticket from the National Lottery. He pressed it into Mrs. Fuller's hand with surprising gentleness. Keep this. Do not throw it away. Your sorrow has an expiration date. Before they could respond, he wandered off, returning to his mysterious mutterings. Mrs. Fuller almost threw the ticket away, what use was a probably fake lottery ticket when they had nowhere to sleep? But Lara insisted they keep it. Mama, remember the shoemaker yesterday? Miracles are happening. Let's just keep it. Meanwhile, Pa Eze and Chidi had reached New Dawn. Mr. Boko's address led them to a modest but well-maintained house. When Mr. Boko opened the door, his face went through several emotions: surprise, joy, then concern seeing their condition. Eze, my brother. But what has happened to you? Over tea, Pa Eze told his story. Mr. Boko listened with growing emotion. When Pa Eze finished, Mr. Boko stood up abruptly and left the room. He returned with a set of keys and an envelope. Do you remember 15 years ago when my workshop burned? You gave me everything you had, 50,000 naira. You saved my life, Eze. Now it's my turn. He explained that he owned 2 houses now. The second one, smaller but comfortable, had been a rental property, but the tenants just moved out. It's yours. No rent. Ever. And this, he handed over the envelope, is 100,000 naira. Start your shoe business again. Enroll Chidi in school. You saved me once, let me save you now. Pa Eze wept. For the first time since his wife died 10 years ago, he wept openly. Kindness had come full circle. 3 days later, back in Riverbank, Lara and her mother had found temporary shelter with a church member. They were watching television at a viewing center when the 9 p.m. news came on. And now for the national lottery results. This month's grand prize of 100 million naira goes to ticket number 08-45-76-32-11. Lara gasped. Those numbers sounded familiar. Her mother pulled out the crumpled ticket the mad prophet had given them. The numbers matched. Every single one. What followed was a whirlwind. Verification at the lottery office. Newspapers wanting their story. Bank accounts being opened. Suddenly, Mrs. Fowler and Lara went from homeless to millionaires in a matter of days. Their first thought, after securing a new home, was to find Pa Eze. We must find this shoemaker who helped you. We must bless him abundantly. But when they returned to his corner in Riverbank, they found only empty space. The demolition had scattered all the traders. No one knew exactly where the old shoemaker had gone. Some said he left the city, others that he had died. They searched for weeks. Months. They hired people to look for Pa Eze the shoemaker or the old cobbler with a small grandson. But in a country of 200 million people, finding one old man without a surname or address was like finding a specific grain of sand on a beach. Eventually, life moved on, though Lara never forgot the kind eyes of the man who gave her his last money. Time has a way of changing everything except memories. 15 years passed like pages in a book, each year adding new chapters to our separated characters' lives. Lara had become everything her teachers predicted and more. At 27, she was the CEO of Lara Fashions, a clothing line that had grown from a single shop to 15 stores across the country. Her mother, now known as Madame Fowler, was her business partner and advisor. They had never forgotten their humble beginnings, and their charity foundation had sent over 500 children to school. But Lara still kept a faded memory, an old shoemaker's kind face, hands pressing money into hers, a voice saying education is not something you should lose. In New Dawn, Chidi had grown into a fine young man of 23. He had graduated from university with a degree in business administration, though jobs were scarce. To help his grandfather, who was now in his 70s, he operated a small but respectable shoe repair stand in the morning market. Pa Eze was older, moving slower, but still walked when his hands allowed. He was proud of Chidi. The boy had turned out well, honest and hardworking, never bitter about their struggles. On this particular day, fate decided it was time to close the circle it had opened 15 years ago. Lara was in New Dawn for a business meeting, riding in her company's Toyota Camry, when the car suddenly developed a fault. While her driver called for assistance, she stepped out to stretch her legs. The morning market was bustling nearby. As she walked, the thin heel of her expensive shoe caught in a crack, and the buckle snapped clean off. Oh, wonderful. Of all days. She looked around and spotted a shoe repair stand just across the street. A young man sat there, carefully working on a leather boot. His concentration was complete, his hands moving with practiced precision. Excuse me. Please, can you fix this quickly? I have a meeting in an hour. Chidi looked up, took the shoe, and examined it carefully. I can fix it, Ma. Give me 10 minutes. Please, sit. As he walked, Lara noticed something unusual. Unlike most tradesmen who would fawn over her obviously expensive clothes and jewelry, this young man treated her with simple, respectful courtesy. Nothing more, nothing less. When he finished, the repair was perfect, nearly invisible. Excellent work. How much? Nothing, Ma. It was a small thing. Don't be ridiculous. Your time and skill have value. How much? My grandfather always taught me that we don't need to collect money for every small kindness. Sometimes, we just help. You were in need, I could help, so I did. That's enough. Something stirred in Lara's memory. The philosophy, the humility, it felt familiar, like an echo from the past. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. What's your name? Chidi, Ma. Chidi, are you employed? I'm between opportunities, Ma. I helped my grandfather with his shoe business while searching. Lara reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. I might have something for you. My mother needs a new driver, someone trustworthy and diligent. Come to this address tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ask for Madam Fola. The next day, Chidi arrived at the address, a stunning mansion in the government-reserved area of New Dawn. He was nervous but neat in his best clothes. Madam Fola interviewed him herself. She was elegant but kind, asking about his education, his experience, his family. You say you live with your grandfather. What does he do? He's a shoemaker, Ma. His name is Pa Eze. He raised me after my parents died. The name stirred something in Madam Fola's mind, but she couldn't quite place it. There were many Ezes in Nigeria. She hired him on the spot, impressed by his honesty and composure. For 2 weeks, Chidi worked diligently. He was punctual, respectful, and trustworthy. The entire household grew to like him. He often spoke fondly of his grandfather, sometimes sharing Pa Eze's sayings about kindness and honesty. Then came the day when everything aligned. Lara had come to visit her mother. As she stepped out of her own car, she saw the new driver washing her mother's Mercedes. He looked familiar. Wait, you're the shoemaker from the market. Yes, Ma. Thank you for recommending me. This job has been a blessing. They chatted briefly, and Chidi mentioned needing to leave early that day. My grandfather hasn't been feeling strong. Pa Eze is getting old, and I worry about him walking in the sun. Lara froze. Pa Eze. The name hit her like electricity. Chidi, your grandfather, Pa Eze, did he once have a stall in Riverbank? About 15 years ago. Yes, Ma. We lived in Riverbank until I was 8. His stall was demolished by the government. Why do you ask? Lara's eyes filled with tears. Her heart was racing. What happened after the demolition? It was terrible. We lost everything. We even slept on the street because Papa had given his rent money to help some schoolgirl pay her fees. Then we moved to New Dawn, where Papa's friend helped us start over. Lara couldn't speak. The schoolgirl. That was her. This young man in front of her was the grandson of the man who had changed her entire life. Voice breaking, Chidi. I was that schoolgirl. What? 15 years ago, I lost my school fees. An old shoemaker, your grandfather, gave me his last 4,000 naira. His rent money. I promised to come back and thank him, but when we returned, his stall was gone. We searched everywhere. We've been looking for him for 15 years. Chidi stared at her in shock. The elegant, successful woman in front of him was the little girl whose school fees had cost them everything, and yet, in a strange way, led them to Mr. Buckle's help and their survival. Is Pa Eze still alive? Chidi, yes, he is. He's at our house in New Dawn. He still mends shoes when he can. Take me to him. Please. Take me to him now. An hour later, Lara stood in front of a small but neat house in a modest neighborhood of New Dawn. Her hands were shaking. Behind her, a small convoy had gathered. Her mother had insisted on coming, and they had brought several assistants carrying gifts. Pa Eze was in the front yard, sitting under a mango tree, walking on a worn shoe with his now trembling hands. He looked up at the commotion, confused. Chidi stepped forward. Papa, there's someone here to see you. Lara moved forward slowly, then suddenly fell to her knees in front of the old man, tears streaming down her face. Baba, you won't remember me. 15 years ago, in Riverbank, I was a small girl who lost her school fees. You gave me your rent money. All of it. 4,000 naira. Pa Eze's eyes widened. He studied her face, and somewhere in those successful features, he saw the crying 12-year-old girl. You're the schoolgirl. But how? You saved my life, Baba. That money kept me in school. Today, I own businesses across the country. Everything I am started with your kindness. We've been looking for you for 15 years. Madam Fola stepped forward too, kneeling beside her daughter. Baba, you lost your home because of what you did for us. Let us repay that kindness. Please. What followed was a moment that proved that no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted. Lara and her mother didn't just repay the 4,000 naira. They bought Pa Eze a new house, a beautiful bungalow in a better part of New Dawn. They established a fully equipped shoe manufacturing workshop where he could train young cobblers. They set up a university fund for not just Chidi, but for 10 other young people from poor families. But perhaps most importantly, they gave him what he had given them 15 years ago, dignity, hope, and the knowledge that kindness, even when it costs everything, is never in vain. Wiping tears, I only did what my heart told me was right. And that, Baba, changed everything. And so, the circle closed. A moment of kindness, planted like a seed in the soil of hardship, had grown into a tree whose branches provided shade for many. Pa Eze lived his remaining years in comfort, watching Chidi grow into a successful businessman, eventually managing one of Lara's companies. The shoemaker who gave his all received back 100-fold, not because he expected it, but because that's how kindness works. It travels in circles, gathering momentum, until it returns to its source, larger and more beautiful than when it left. In Riverbank and New Dawn, the story of Pa Eze became legend, proof that in a world that often seems cruel and random, kindness is the most powerful force of all. And if you listen carefully to the old men who still mend shoes by the roadside, you might hear them say, "We don't need to collect money for every good deed. Sometimes, we just help." Because they know the secret, that helping is its own reward, and kindness, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way home.